Okay, so I've got this lovely coconut, and I'm actually only interested in the shell really for today's project, but I will extract the water and the coconut meat, and we'll see if we can do something else with those. So I'm planning to cut this coconut in half, but I want to cut a piece that doesn't include the eyes, but still makes good use of the size of this coconut. It isn't perfectly symmetrical, so it will be interesting, but let's run with it. I'm actually going to go for, yeah, a piece that's across there and around the back there. And I think probably the easiest way to do that is to stretch a rubber band around roughly where I want to cut. So that looks about straight. And then I'm just going to mark where that rubber band is with a pen, just in a few places. Okay, so that's a visible line for where I'm going to cut. Next thing is to get the coconut water out. So, now as I understand it, there's an eye, and there's two eyes and a mouth. That's the one that's easiest to pierce right there. We'll test if that's actually true in a minute, but let's just have a go. So, yeah, that was very easy to pierce. Okay, so let's cut a slightly larger hole in our coconut right there. Let's see if that comes out now. Yep, that's going to come out. Okay, we'll just leave that to drain. Not yours. Okay, so that's most or all of the coconut water out of the coconut. Let's just make sure that we really did get it all. Yeah, it looks like. Okay, so let's just test this theory about the other things being harder to pierce. Well, it looks to be true actually. There you go. Yeah, those are pretty darn hard. I suspect I probably could pierce them, but there you go, it is true. The two eyes are hard to pierce, and that one, which they call the mouth, I think is okay. So there we go. Right, coconut water, we could use that in cooking, or we could just drink that. I think I'd probably strain it before I drink it. Let's go and cut this in half. Keeping this steady while I try and saw it in half is an interesting task. I could make some elaborate clamp with circles to hold it. That seems like too much of a workup. Or I could go a little bit up tech and use a Dremel with a circular blade to carefully cut round all of there. But I'm actually just going to go low tech here. I've got a bunch of old rags here. I'm just going to bunch them up and nestle this coconut in the middle of the rags, which just means it won't roll around too much, because I think we're going to find this cuts relatively easily. You've got to be a bit careful here, because this material is pretty tough and the saw blade does just want to slip off, and so it would be possible to slip off and hit your fingers, so it's worth keeping your knuckles like that so you can support the saw blade without getting the sharp bit near your fingertips. Okay, and I think we're through all the way round now. Let me just check that. Yeah, looks like we are through all the way round. So this top part ought to just pop off now. Yep, there we go. So obviously my saw has ruined this bit of coconut here. I'm not going to try and eat that bit, so we'll trim that off, and likewise on that piece, but we still managed to save most of the coconut. So we'll take that indoors now and get the coconut meat out, and then see what we've got left of the shell. Okay, so back in the kitchen, I've got my two halves of coconut, and I just need to discard this piece here, which was in contact with the rusty old saw blade. So just going to take my little knife and run around there. As you can see, I've actually wasted very little of the coconut. Same on this piece. Just take that sharp knife, discard the bit that's been tainted with rust from the saw blade. Right, I'm going to rinse these two pieces here to just get rid of the rest of the dust. And then we need to carefully pick out the bits of coconut. Now this is always a bit tricky, but it's just a case of getting a sharp knife in there in between the coconut meat and the shell and breaking pieces out. Back to 40. Need a more blunt but stronger knife so I can apply a little bit of leverage. There we go. And it'll come out in pieces like that, and we just drop them into cold water to keep them fresh. You can get this to free up from the shell by heating the shell. Obviously I can't do that because I'm looking to try and keep this shell as intact and sound as possible, and I don't want it to crack or anything like that. There we go. So just a few more little bits to clean out inside there. Don't worry about those score marks, won't matter at all. That is my piece of coconut shell that we're going to try and make something out of. Right, so I've got my cut coconut shell. This has been drying out for a couple of weeks now, and it's nice and dry. And I'm going to sand it initially on this 80 grit flap wheel, just to take all this fuzz off and to get down to the actual shell material. So for this we are going to use a dust mask, because the dust that comes off of here is going to be fibrous and pretty nasty. So just a dust mask and a glove to protect one of my hands from the wheel, the hand that's holding it closest, just so I don't go and get my skin abraded. So here we go. Okay, so let's just have a look at that. We're getting through that fuzz and fibrous material now, through to actually a really smooth and quite interestingly patterned underlayer there. These pieces here are still fibrous, but actually it's more like behaving more like wood now than fibrous coconut shell. So let's keep going. This is just an 80 grit wheel, so this is going to take off all the rough stuff. We are going to have to do several bits of sanding after this to get down to a smooth surface that I can polish. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to take it on that flap wheel now. What we've done is we've sanded off all of the fibrous pieces, and we've got ourselves down to a craftable, smooth and hard material now. So now the laborious bit, which we'll be going over by hand with finer grits until we get a surface that can actually be polished. Okay, I'm now down to 240 grit, and look at some of the pattern that's coming out of there, and the feel of this shell is now smooth as silk. So we've just got to keep going. I think 240 is probably as far as I'm going to take it. It's interesting, it does polish down ever so quickly to a very smooth finish, that you can still feel some of these fibres, and I think that's inevitable. That's a bit like just feeling the grain of wood, really. But you can already see that even at 240 grit, it's starting to take a little bit of a natural sheen there on that polished side. So that's as far as I'm going to take it, and then we'll put some wax polish on when it's finished. Okay, the other thing I have to do is just flatten off this cut surface here. It is more or less straight, but I'm just going to flatten it because we're going to glue something to that. So this is just 40 grit paper. use like a figure of 8 motion here to try and keep it nice and straight and flat. Okay, I think that'll do it. That feels smooth now all along that side. It's only, as I say, a 40 grit paper, but I want a few little scratches and things here anyway because I'm going to glue something to this side. So let's just finish up the outside surface here for now. This is again back to the 240 grit paper, and I've probably got it, I think, as far as I'm going to take it for now. We might do a bit of final sanding and so on before we polish the finished piece, but this should give you an idea of how nice this material looks when it's polished and sanded. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? You can see all the little fibres and features and so on, and a nice little coat of wax polish or shellac or something will just bring that right out. So last little bit of sanding, and that's all for this video. So I am going to make something out of this, so if you want to see the next stage, then please subscribe. It'll be coming along soon. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.